In 1975, Ray Dalio launched Bridgewater, an investment firm from one of his apartments. It is currently the largest hedge fund in the world, with over $160 billion in total assets under management. According to our assessment, Ray Dalio is one of the top 3 greatest investors in the history of the world. Welcome to the Investing Wise Academy, a channel where aspiring millionaires and billionaires can learn how to invest wisely. In this video, we'll go over the stock portfolio of Ray Dalio's investing firm, Bridgewater. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe to see more videos like this. Let's get started. What stocks does Ray Dalio, an investor with over 40 years of experience at the highest level, own in his portfolio to position himself well for the future? Let's look deeper into Ray Dalio's portfolio. Investment 1. Vanguard FTSE Emerging Market ETF, 15.9%. Ray Dalio's number 1 investment is the Vanguard FTSE Emerging Market ETF. Ray Dalio owns 47.5 thousand shares in this particular investment, which is worth more than $2 billion. To put it another way, it accounts for 15.9% of his Bridgewater portfolio. ETFs like this one allow investors to diversify their portfolios by investing in stocks and emerging markets. China, Brazil, Taiwan, and South Africa are just a few of the many rising areas in which VWO is active. It's a diverse group of nations. There is a lot of growth potential in these ETFs. Consider the potential for corporate expansion in less developed nations. They do, however, carry a greater burden of risk and are by no means as secure as the United States. This particular exchange-traded fund, or ETF, hasn't performed well for Dalio during the last decade. It resulted in a 5.56% profit for him. Investment 2. SPDR S&P 500 ETF, 15.6%. The SPDR S&P 500 ETF is the second largest position. Anyone who has studied Dalio knows that he is a big fan of exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. Individual stock picks are included in this portfolio. This ETF is worth about $2 billion and accounts for 15.6% of Bridgewater's total portfolio. Those who follow the stock market will be familiar with this ETF. Basically, the S&P committee selects large and mid-cap US companies for this ETF. It basically follows the S&P 500 index. There are 500 significant and well-known stocks in the United States. It's the most well-known barometer for the US stock market as a whole. A third of Dalio's portfolio is invested in either emerging markets or a US ETF. Dalio has a wide range of stocks and nations in which he invests. However, Dalio's third and fourth largest positions will reveal which of these 2 markets he favors. Investment 3 and 4. IEMG and EEM, 9.4% and 8.7%. These following 2 investments are basically the same thing. They are both ETFs that track emerging markets. IEMG intends to check the investment outcomes of an index comprising of large, mid, and small capitalization emerging market equities. And when you look at EEM, it actually performs the exact same thing as IEMG. But it does not track the small cap stocks. It only tracks the major and mid-sized stocks. Among the companies that make up these ETFs holdings are Tencent, Alibaba, and more. Those are the 2 key positions. You've also got Taiwan Semiconductors and Samsung. You've got NASPA. That's a huge corporation in South Africa, and Reliance Industries from India. Investment 5. Ishares Core S&P 500 ETF, 5.1%. We don't have much to say about these ETF, to be honest. It's a staple of the S&P 500 ETF lineup. It's the same as Dalio's investment number 2, which has already been described in detail. Investment 6. SPDR Gold Trust or GLD 4.2%. The SPDR Gold Trust is Dalio's 6th largest stock holding. He owns $540 million worth of GLD stock through his investment fund Bridgewater, which accounts for 4.2% of his whole portfolio. What exactly is this SPDR Gold Trust? A physical gold exchange traded fund, SPDR Gold Shares is the world's largest ETF in this regard. An inexpensive, simple, and safe option for investors to gain exposure to gold. At only 0.4%, the cost-to-income ratio is very favorable. The assets under management are $41.5 billion, with exposure type being physically held. So they have gold that is actually in the hands of the person who owns it. The question now becomes, why does Dalio own gold? Isn't gold just something that sits there and looks pretty? Not exactly. Ray Dalio actually owns gold for 2 reasons. 1 is as a store of value, and 2 as a form of portfolio diversification. As Ray Dalio said, we have a situation now where when you have too much debt leads to the printing of money to make it easier to service. So all of those things mean that some portion of your investments should be in gold. Dalio also said that if you don't own gold, you know neither history nor economics. He recommends holding 5 to 10% of your assets in gold as a hedge against inflation. There are many reasons for him to have a high stake in this gold ETF, including the fact that it is his 15th largest investment, even more exposure to the gold in his portfolio. Investment 7. Ishares MSCI Brazil ETF 3.2%. Ray Dalio has a fascinating position here. For $412 million, Dalio is invested in a Brazil ETF, not a lowly place. This ETF is primarily intended to monitor the performance of the Brazilian stock market as a whole. It exposes you to Brazilian large and medium-sized businesses. Ray Dalio has had a 7.16% return on his investment from start. It's been a great year for Ray Dalio in this annex. He received a 39% return on his investment. Maybe things will get better for this particular ETF in the future. Bridgewater's fondness for Brazil fascinates us. As recently as a few months ago, it was predicted that Brazil's economy will be growing at its fastest pace ever by 2020. Therefore, if you're looking for an investment with high potential growth, we would suggest you look deeper into the situation of Brazil. Investment 8, 9, and 10. LQD, HYG, and TLT with 2.6%, 2.2%, and 2.1%. All 3 of the following investments are bonds, which is why I've put them together. You've got LQD, which is an investment-grade corporate bond ETF, HYG, which is a high-yield corporate bond, and finally, TLT, which is a 20-plus year treasury bond. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of a bond, you're essentially making a loan to someone. It could be a government or a firm that you lend money to. Returning your investment is part of their deal. Of course, you'll also be compensated with interest. With the bonds that Dalio owns, the fact that he holds 2 business bonds and a government bond implies he has effectively loaned money to a number of different companies. These bonds will earn him interest, and in general, bonds are thought of as a more secure form of investment. Investment 11. Ishares MSCI South Korea ETF 3.2%. The South Korean Exchange Traded Fund accounts for 1.7% of Dalio's portfolio and has a value of $230 million worth of holdings in the fund. So, what are the aims of this exchange traded fund? It does this by following the changes in value that occur within an index that is made up of South Korean stocks. For the purpose of expressing a position on a specific country, it is aimed towards large and mid-cap equities. Dalio has seen performance that is about par for this investment. It was important in him achieving a return of 6.9% with this particular ETF as a result. However, South Korea's performance throughout the course of the past year has seen quite poor. It is now 10.3% lower than it was before. Now, let's discuss the big individual equities that are held by the investment firm Bridgewater, which is headed by Ray Dalio. Key stocks: Alibaba 0.4%. Alibaba is a major holding of billionaire investor Ray Dalio's. China's Alibaba is an e-commerce platform. In addition to e-commerce, they also provide a variety of other services. Throughout China, or actually throughout Asia, they've established a payment system and a number of business models that they use. Alibaba currently has a P/E ratio of 47.5 and trades for $166, making it a good value at $3.50 per share. The P/E ratio is a touch high, but it will decrease as their earnings rise. To put it another way, Bridgewater owns 313.9 shares of Alibaba, worth $53.2 million. Key stocks: Royal Bank of Canada 0.3%. The Royal Bank of Canada, the country's largest bank, is one of the institutions that has seen in his portfolio. A 4.3% dividend is paid out by this bank, which has a P/E ratio of 11.2, and it has a low yield. This is a fascinating company to learn more about. Key stocks: Berkshire Hathaway 0.2%. Dalio also holds a significant amount of stock in Berkshire Hathaway, which is another highly fascinating position. A financial services firm that is led by one of the most successful investors in history, Warren Buffett. Dalio is well aware that the moment you purchase Berkshire, you are immediately put in contact with a number of the most successful companies in history. Dalio has a large number of more fascinating stocks in his portfolio. In addition to Berkshire Hathaway and Alibaba, he is the owner of a range. He has clients such as Google, IBM, and Coca-Cola on his client list. Unfortunately, there isn't enough time in this video to cover all of them. However, we believe that is something that all of you should investigate more. That's all for today. What are your thoughts on Ray Dalio's investment portfolio? Join the conversation in the comments section below. Please click the like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed the video. We'll see you in the next one.